Brenda, you need to see this immediately. Your sister just closed the deal on the sale of your property. These words from my lawyer struck like a bolt from the blue in my Milan apartment on a Wednesday morning. I froze, a coffee cup halfway to my mouth, trying to process what Mr. Hayes had just told me over the phone. My name is Brenda, and I'm 26. For the last 3 years, I've been living in Italy, working as a creative specialist at a well-known advertising firm. I moved here from Austin right after college, dreaming of living abroad, experiencing a new culture, and seeing the world. My parents fully supported my decision, but my older sister, Jessica, made it clear she considered my actions the height of irresponsibility. At 32, she was married with 2 kids and always positioned herself as the most adult and sensible member of our family. What property? I asked, managing to set the cup down on the table. My hands were trembling slightly. Your grandmother's condominium in Austin. The one she bequeathed personally to you. My heart sank. Grandma Catherine had passed away 6 months ago, and I had flown home for the funeral. It was an incredibly difficult time. She was the only person in our family who truly understood my desire to explore the world, take risks, and live differently. I had no idea about any condominium, I said slowly. No one said a word to me. Brenda, Mr. Hayes replied after a short pause, the will clearly states you are the sole heir to this property. It's a 3-bedroom apartment in the heart of Austin, with a market value of about $400,000. Your sister sold it last week for $350,000. My head spun. $400,000 was a life-changing amount of money. It would be enough to pay off my student loans and maybe even make a down payment on my own home one day. And Jessica just took it and sold it. How is that even possible? I asked. If the apartment was willed to me, how could she sell it? That's exactly what I'm trying to determine, Mr. Hayes answered, his voice measured and cautious over the phone. I only gained access to the probate documents yesterday, and some details raise serious questions. I'm looking into it right now, but, Brenda, it is crucial that you do not contact your sister yet. Let me complete my fact-checking first. I gave him my word, though every instinct screamed at me to dial Jessica's number and demand an explanation. Instead, left alone in the silence of my Milan apartment, I tried to make sense of what was happening. My thoughts drifted back to Grandma Catherine. She had been a special person in my life. While my parents were completely absorbed in their small construction business and Jessica was focused on building a career at a large insurance company, it was Grandma who gave me her time. I still remember us sitting together for hours, flipping through travel magazines as she told me about the distant lands I dreamed of seeing one day. She understood my ambition well, as she herself had traveled extensively in her youth before marrying my grandfather and settling in Texas. When I announced my decision to move to Italy, Jessica's reaction was the most severe. You're just ruining your future, she declared at a family dinner. What kind of career are you going to build there? It's selfish to leave and let our parents deal with everything here alone. My parents were more supportive, though I could tell they would have preferred I stay closer to home. But it was Grandma Catherine who pulled me aside just before I left and squeezed my hand tightly. Her words were almost a whisper, go. Make sure you see the world while you have the chance. And never let anyone make you apologize for your dreams. That was the memory that surfaced now as I sat in my Milan apartment, watching the morning light. I was filled with a sharp regret that I never got to truly thank her for that support. And now Jessica, my own sister, had stolen her final, most meaningful gift. Just then, my phone vibrated. A message from my mom. Honey, just spoke with Jessica, she said she finally sold Grandma's apartment. What a relief that's taken care of. Hope everything is well with you in Italy. I stared at the screen, and indignation boiled inside me. My mother was completely in the dark. She genuinely believed Jessica had simply taken on the burden of settling family affairs. She had no idea what our grandmother's true wish was. Gathering my thoughts, I typed a short, neutral reply, glad it's all sorted out. We'll talk later. And immediately after, I dialed Mr. Hayes's number again. I need to know every detail, I said without preamble. How could this have possibly happened? I'm working on it, he assured me. I've already submitted a formal request for copies of all documents related to the sale. If your sister forged signatures or misrepresented the ownership information, we'll prove it. I just need a few more days to gather all the facts. The wait for news from the lawyer was the hardest part. The days dragged on. My job, which usually brought me joy, became a series of automatic motions. I created advertising concepts for hotels, but my mind was far from Italy. It was in Austin, in the past. I kept thinking about Grandma Catherine, especially our last meeting before her health began to decline. She looked frail, but her eyes still had the same spark as she told me about her trip to Italy as a young woman. You remind me so much of myself when I was young, she had said then, lightly touching my hand. Promise me you'll never stop exploring this world, Brenda. Don't let routine narrow your horizons. I promised. And only now did I realize she wasn't just trying to give me an apartment, but a tool to fulfill that promise, freedom. Jessica and I were never really close. The 5-year age difference seemed like a chasm in our childhood, and our personalities were polar opposites. She was always pragmatic, ambitious, and placed immense value on external success. I was the creative one, valuing experiences far more than material possessions. Our paths diverged even further when I moved. Jessica used almost every family video call as an opportunity to remark that I was wasting my potential or running away from real life. My parents tried to smooth things over, but it was clear they were caught in the middle. Jessica was very skilled at crafting an image of the responsible daughter who stayed home and took on all the family duties. When Grandma Catherine's health worsened, I flew home without a second thought. I remember Jessica seemed annoyed by my arrival, as if I were intruding on her territory. She quickly assumed the role of the primary caregiver, controlling all medical and financial matters. At that moment, overwhelmed by grief and jet lag, I was even grateful. It seemed easier to let her handle all the practicalities. Now, looking back, I wondered, what else had she been doing behind my back while I trustingly let her control everything? During those days of waiting, my memories of Grandma Catherine grew sharper. She had lived in that apartment for 12 years, ever since Grandpa passed. It was her personal fortress, a symbol of the new, independent life she had built for herself after decades of marriage. She humorously called it her freedom headquarters. The apartment had a small balcony with a view of the Austin city lights, which she had turned into a cozy green nook. I remembered visiting her during college breaks, and we would sit there for hours with cups of tea, discussing everything from world news to our favorite poems. She was the only person in the family who never judged my desire to live differently, outside the conventional mold. A call from Mr. Hayes on Friday evening interrupted my thoughts. His voice was restrained, but I detected a cold anger in it. Brenda, I've reviewed all the documents. What your sister did is outright fraud. I sank heavily onto the sofa, the room swimming slightly before my eyes. Tell me. Your grandmother's will was crystal clear, he continued. The apartment was intended for you, and attached to the documents was a letter in which she explained she wanted to provide you with a financial safety net for your life abroad. Your sister, as the executor of the will, had access to the papers, but that gave her absolutely no right to the property itself. But if the will named me, how could the sale have gone through? I asked, trying to wrap my head around it. She created a forged set of documents, Mr. Hayes stated plainly. A document was fabricated that supposedly transferred ownership to her. That's what she presented to the real estate agent and the buyers. The transaction went smoothly because no one had any reason to doubt the authenticity of her claim. I felt my hands turn cold. But that's a crime. Absolutely. We are dealing with fraud, document forgery, and grand theft. The positive side is that the sale can be legally nullified. The difficulty is that it will be a challenging process. Your sister has already spent a portion of the proceeds. How do you know that? I conducted a preliminary check. Just last week, a major purchase was made in her name, a down payment on a new house in a prestigious gated community. My assumption is she was planning to use the money from the apartment sale to significantly upgrade her standard of living. As I listened, a deep sense of injustice washed over me. While I was living in Milan, being mindful of every expense, Jessica was using my inheritance to afford a more luxurious life for herself and her family. What's our next step? I asked. First, I am immediately filing a lawsuit in Austin. This measure will freeze any remaining funds in the account and initiate the process of contesting the sale. Second, I will need your help. Please gather any correspondence you have with your grandmother, letters, postcards, emails, anything that can confirm your close relationship and her intentions. And third, and this is very important, you must understand that this will seriously affect your family relationships. Your sister will not give up without a fight. Let her try, I replied, surprised at the firmness in my own voice. She stole from me. She committed fraud. I know, and we will prove it. But, Brenda, you must understand, your parents will be put in a very difficult position. You need to be prepared for that. The thought of my mother's recent message, where she was happy that Jessica had handled everything, lingered in my mind. My mother didn't know the truth. I knew the truth would be a heavy blow for her. But backing down and letting Jessica keep what didn't belong to her was impossible. It wasn't just about the money, though the amount was significant. What mattered most was that this was Grandma Catherine's last wish. She had clearly stated her will, and my sister decided her own interests were more important than this final gift. I spent the entire weekend sorting through my digital archives, reviewing years of correspondence with my grandmother. She had learned to use email in her 70s, and we often exchanged letters while I lived in Italy. Rereading her words now was painful. In one email, sent 2 years ago, she wrote, "Brenda, I am so proud that you are following your dream. Your grandfather often said that I sacrificed too much when we got married and that I should have traveled more. I don't regret my life, but I want you to know, it's okay to strive for more. Don't let anyone make you believe that ambition is not a feminine quality or that the desire to see the world is selfish. You are the bravest person I know." Another message, which arrived just 8 months before she passed, was even more significant. "I've been thinking a lot lately about getting my affairs in order. I want you to be secure in your future. You are building a wonderful life in Italy, and I want to support you in that. Don't worry about the details now, just know that I have taken care of you." I gathered these emails, attached a few of our photos together, and even a picture of a greeting card in which she wrote how much she admired my independence. I immediately forwarded this entire package of documents to Mr. Hayes. The beginning of the week was marked by a call from Mr. Hayes. "The process has been initiated," he reported in a businesslike tone. "We filed the lawsuit, and the court has immediately frozen all accounts associated with the transaction. Your sister no longer has access to the remaining money. She has been officially notified." "Has she reacted in any way?" I asked. "Silence so far, but I would advise you to be on guard. She will likely try to contact you directly," he warned. "Events may now unfold very quickly. But no warning could have prepared me for what happened next. It happened on Tuesday, late at night. The sharp ring of the phone jolted me from a dream in which I was once again sitting in the cozy armchair by the large window in Grandma Catherine's apartment, in her favorite reading nook. On the glowing screen in the darkness, I saw the name, Jessica. My heart hammered in my chest. For a moment, the thought of declining the call flashed through my mind, but I knew this conversation was inevitable. I gathered my courage and answered. "Brenda, hi," her voice was unnaturally cheerful. "Hope I didn't wake you. I just have the most amazing news." I sat up in bed, turning on the lamp. "What's up?" "I finally sold Grandma's apartment. I got a great price for it. But listen to this, it gets better. I've decided to help you out and I'm going to send you $20,000. You know, as a thank you for coming for the funeral. I thought you could use a little support in Italy." I was silent, at a loss for words. The air in the room seemed to thicken. She wasn't just admitting to what she'd done, she was bragging about it. She called me in the middle of the night to present the theft of my inheritance as a personal achievement and to offer me a pitiful handout as an act of incredible generosity. 20,000 was all I could manage to say. The number hung in the nightly silence of my room. Yeah, I know, she replied with a self-satisfied tone. Pretty generous of me. Especially considering I was the one who handled all the paperwork. You were far away in Europe, and someone had to deal with the documents, talk to the agents. It was a real headache, but family is family, right? I gripped the phone so tightly I was afraid for a moment it would crack in my hand. Jessica, when exactly did you close the deal? I asked, trying to keep my voice from trembling. Last week. Why? And you decided to tell me about it only now? A condescending laugh came from the other end. Well, of course. I wanted to make sure everything was finalized before bothering anyone. You know how it is with real estate, things can fall through. But it's a done deal now. The money is in my account, and I'm ready to write you a check. In your account, I repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. Well, yeah, I was the executor. All the financial flows had to go through me. But don't worry, I'm sharing. 20,000, Brenda. That's enough for a great vacation or whatever it is you spend your money on in your Italy. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts for the main question. Jessica, I need to clarify something. Did Grandma leave a will? Silence on the other end of the line. Yes, of course, there was a will, she answered. What's this about? And what did it say about the apartment? I asked the next question. The pause this time was longer and more tense. It said that the assets should be distributed among the family members. Standard procedure. Brenda, what's with all the questions? Do you have a problem with me? I'm just trying to understand the details, I replied in an even voice. You should have been interested in the details earlier, her tone shifted abruptly, filled with reproach. Like when you decided to move to another continent instead of staying here and helping. I was the one who handled everything. I was the one by Grandma's side in her final days. I organized the funeral, dealt with the lawyers, and sold the apartment. And you flew in for 3 days and flew back to your European adventure. Her words were calculated to make me feel guilty, and I knew it. Yes, I lived far away. But I spoke with my grandmother every week, and we had our own special bond. She supported my life choices. I appreciate that you took on those responsibilities, I said carefully. But I want a clear answer to one question. Who specifically, according to the will, was the apartment intended for? Jessica ignored my question. Brenda, you must be very tired. Let's end this conversation. I'll ask Mom to send you the details for the money transfer. She changed the subject abruptly, returning to her caring sister persona. Anyway, I have to go, the kids have dance practice early tomorrow morning. It was nice chatting. And before I could object, she hung up. I sat in the silence of my room, still holding the phone. I was overwhelmed with conflicting emotions, anger mixed with a strange realization of how detached from reality my sister was. It seemed she genuinely believed she was in the right. Or, more likely, she knew exactly what she had done and was just hoping that the $20,000 she offered would buy my silence. In any case, she had made a critical mistake. Her boastful middle-of-the-night call was irrefutable proof that she had no idea about the lawsuit. She didn't know about the frozen account, nor that her forged documents were already under investigation. She was confident in her complete impunity. Without wasting a moment, I dialed Mr. Hayes. Despite the early hour, he answered almost immediately. She just called, I began without preamble. Jessica called to brag about the sale and offer me $20,000 as a generous gift. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Did she mention the will or on what grounds she was acting? He asked. She lied. She claimed the property was to be divided among all family members. She tried to frame it as if she were doing me a huge favor by sharing anything at all. "This is exactly what we need," Mr. Hayes said firmly. "It proves her willful misrepresentation of the facts. From this point forward, I would recommend you record any conversations you have with her. Every word she says could be valuable evidence in court." For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of confidence. "And what's our next move?" "Now, events will unfold according to our plan. Her bank will soon notify her about the account freeze. Then she'll realize the sale is being contested and will quickly figure out who's behind it. And that's when, Brenda, you need to be prepared for real pressure. Her first reaction will be panic. And that will be immediately followed by an attempt to paint you in a bad light to the entire family. She'll call you greedy, accuse you of misunderstanding, she'll do everything to turn your relatives against you. You must be ready for that." "I'm ready for it," I said firmly. "Let her invent any story she wants. The truth is on our side." "That's the right attitude," Mr. Hayes said approvingly. "Now try to get some rest. Tomorrow could be a difficult day." But I couldn't sleep. I lay awake until morning, watching the sky over Milan slowly lighten. I thought about my grandmother's cozy reading nook by the window in her Austin apartment and tried to imagine what she would say about all this. And I was almost certain she would have advised me to fight. That's exactly what I intended to do. The climax came a day and a half later. I was at work, in a conference room, discussing a design for an ad campaign for a new restaurant chain with my team. Suddenly, my phone in my pocket began to vibrate insistently. I glanced at the screen, a missed call from Jessica, then from my mom, then Jessica again, and then a call from an unknown Texas number. I excused myself to my colleagues and stepped out into the hallway, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. It had begun. She knew. I answered the next call from Jessica. "Hello. What have you done?" Her voice was breaking with rage. "What have you done, Brenda?" "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied as calmly as I could, though my heart was pounding furiously. "Don't pretend. The bank froze the account with all the money from the sale. They told me a lawsuit has been filed against me. Is this your doing?" "Jessica, I think it's time we had a frank conversation about Grandma's will. There's nothing to talk about. That apartment was part of the inheritance that I was managing. You had no right to interfere." "The apartment was left to me," I said, quietly but clearly. "Grandma's will states perfectly clearly that it was intended for me. Not for you, not to be divided, but personally for me." A long, ringing silence hung on the line. When she spoke again, the hot rage in her voice was gone. It had turned cold and calculated. "That's an absurd lie," she snapped. "I was the executor. I saw the document myself. Everything was left to the family." "No, Jessica. You know the truth perfectly well. And you know it because you created fake papers yourself to make everything look the way you wanted it to." "Fake? Are you out of your mind? You haven't been in the country for 3 years, and now you're calling with some wild fantasies. You have no idea what the real situation is. I have a lawyer, Jessica. He has a copy of the real will. And a copy of the documents you provided for the sale. And they don't match. What you did has a legal name, fraud." I heard her breath catch on the other end of the line. "You've just lost your mind," she hissed. "I'm going to tell our parents about this. They'll find out what you're doing. Trying to rob your own family." "I'm not robbing anyone. I'm taking back what Grandma rightfully left me." "Left you?" She laughed bitterly. "You were always her favorite, weren't you? Flitting about the world without a care while we were here shouldering all the real responsibility. You seriously think she wanted to reward that?" Her words were sharp, but I didn't take the bait. "Grandma's true wishes are recorded in her will, Jessica. Legal documents, unlike you, don't lie. You're making a terrible mistake." Her voice became quiet and threatening. "You have no idea what you've started. Do you think you can just come back from your Italy and destroy everything we've built? think about our parents. They'll be devastated. My children will grow up knowing their aunt tore the family apart over money. Is that really what you want? The only thing I want is for Grandma's will to be honored, I said. That's all that matters. There was silence on the other end, and then the short beeps of a disconnected line. She had hung up. I stood in the middle of the office hallway, a tremor running through my hands. My colleague, Anna, peeked out from the conference room. Brenda, are you okay? Yes, just family stuff, I managed to say. I'll be right back. I ducked into the restroom and splashed cold water on my face, trying to compose myself. This was real. I had just, out loud, accused my sister of fraud. The point of no return had been crossed. The phone vibrated again. Mom. This conversation was inevitable. Brenda, honey, what's going on? Her voice on the phone sounded confused and alarmed. Jessica just called me, she was terribly upset. She said you're suing her? Mom, I'm not suing her. I'm contesting the sale of Grandma's apartment because it was illegal. But why? Jessica was handling all the arrangements. She did such a good job with everything. I don't understand why you're making waves now. I closed my eyes, gathering my strength. Mom, tell me, did Jessica show you the will itself? Well, not the document itself. She explained everything to us. She said all the property was left to the family, and as the executor, she was managing it. That's standard practice, isn't it? And did she explain to you that Grandma left her apartment specifically to me? There was a pause. I could only hear soft breathing. What do you mean, specifically to you? It means that the will states in black and white, the apartment goes to me. Only me. Not to Jessica. Not to be divided among everyone. She left it to me and even attached a letter explaining why. That can't be, my mom said after a long pause, her voice filled with complete confusion. Jessica explained everything to us completely differently. She said she was selling the apartment to settle the estate, and that you, of course, would get your share. Mom, she offered me $20,000, I replied. And she sold the apartment for $350,000. Does that sound like a fair share? Silence again. No, there must be some mistake. I'll talk to her. I'm sure there's a simple explanation for this. Mom, it's not a mistake. My lawyer has reviewed all the papers. Jessica created fake documents to pass the apartment off as her own. That's called fraud. Brenda, do you even realize what you're accusing her of? My mom exclaimed. This is your sister. Jessica wouldn't do something like that. She took on all the responsibility after Grandma passed away while you were far away. Maybe you're just misinterpreting some legal technicalities? At that moment, I realized she didn't believe me. Despite the facts, she was choosing Jessica's side. Mom, I'm not misinterpreting anything. Grandma wanted me to have that apartment. Jessica knew that, but she decided to take it for herself. You need to think very carefully about the consequences, her voice became stricter. Are you willing to destroy the family over an apartment? Your father is already beside himself. Jessica's husband is in despair. The children are scared. And all for what? For money? It's not about the money, Mom. It's about doing the right thing and respecting Grandma's final wish. Grandma wouldn't want to see you two fighting. She loved you both equally. Yes, she did. And that's exactly why she left the apartment to me, to support me in Italy. She wrote to me about it. I have proof. I have to go, my mom cut me off sharply. Your father and I need to discuss this. But I hope you'll reconsider, Brenda. Family should always come first. The following week, the conflict escalated sharply. Jessica hired a lawyer who sent an official letter with accusations against me. It claimed that I was making false claims due to a misunderstanding of the law and my long absence. My lawyer called it a standard intimidation tactic, but it was hard to stay calm. I was hit by a barrage of calls from relatives. My aunt, my cousin, and even my father, who usually avoided conflict, all urged me to back down for the sake of family peace. The only person who didn't contact me was Jessica herself, and her silence was more frightening than anything. At work, I was completely distracted by sleepless nights filled with calls. My supervisor, noticing this, suggested I take a vacation, but I refused. Work was the only thing that distracted me from the family chaos. Soon, my lawyer, Mr. Hayes, informed me that a court hearing was scheduled in Austin in 2 weeks, and my presence was highly desirable. Even though returning to the US felt surreal, I knew I had to do it for my grandmother. I bought a ticket for the following week and arranged to stay with a friend to avoid seeing my parents, who were still on Jessica's side. And then something unexpected happened. I received an email from Susan Miller, the woman who had bought the apartment. The subject line read, "Questions regarding the purchased property." In the email, which I opened with a sinking heart, Susan Miller politely and reservedly described her situation. She stated that she and her husband had purchased the apartment from my sister 2 weeks ago, but their lawyer had recently notified them of potential legal issues with the sale. She expressed deep concern, explaining that they had sold their previous home and had already moved into the new apartment with their children. Susan emphasized that they had acted in good faith, as Jessica had provided all the necessary documents confirming her ownership, and their lawyers had found no reason for doubt. Now, as an innocent party in our family conflict, they were facing the risk of losing their new home. A feeling of deep empathy washed over me. These people were unwilling victims of my sister's deception. Their lives had been turned upside down because of her lies. I immediately forwarded the email to Mr. Hayes, and he called me back within an hour. "Oddly enough, this only strengthens our position," he said. "This case clearly demonstrates that your sister misled not only you but also complete strangers. They are now important witnesses to her fraudulent actions." "But what will happen to them?" I asked. "Will they lose their home?" "Legally, the sale will be declared invalid," he explained. "But they will receive a full refund of their money from the account we froze. They won't suffer financially, although they will, unfortunately, have to find new housing. They are just as much victims of your sister's actions as you are." I contacted Susan Miller, expressing my sincere sympathy and directing her to my lawyer. Her grateful and polite response was a stark contrast to the hostility from my own family. And then, on Tuesday, I received an unexpected message from Mark, Jessica's husband. He asked for an urgent video call while his sister was not at home. When we spoke, he looked terribly exhausted and dejected. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this," I said. He ignored my comment and asked a direct question. "Brenda, tell me honestly. Did Grandma really leave the apartment to you?" "Yes," I replied. "It's stated very clearly in the will." Mark closed his eyes for a long time and sighed heavily. "I thought so." "You didn't know?" I asked. "She assured me everything was legal," he began in a low, tense voice. "That the apartment was rightfully hers, and she was just handling the formalities. But her story started to fall apart as soon as your lawsuit became known. When I tried to ask questions, her reaction, her anger made everything clear. It wasn't like her, or at least, not the woman I thought I knew." He paused, looking away from the camera. "Brenda, we're in a terrible situation. She invested almost all the money into a down payment on a new house. A house we can't actually afford. She convinced me it was a good investment. But if the sale is nullified, we simply don't have that money to return. It's already tied up in another property." A cold feeling spread through me. "Mark, I'm sympathetic, but I can't back down. Grandma wanted this apartment to be mine. Jessica had no right to sell it." "I know, and I don't blame you. I'm not calling to ask you to stop. This call is more of a confession. A confession that I seem to have been turning a blind eye to a lot of things for a very long time. Your lawsuit has forced me to reevaluate everything." His admission opened the floodgates for a stream of revelations. Over the next hour, he told me things about his life with Jessica that I never knew, or perhaps just never noticed. He described a series of financial manipulations and small lies that she always justified as being for the family's well-being. The way she explained help from our parents that was actually a loan. The questionable numbers on their loan applications. Even her vague explanation for why their house had to be in her name only, it all now formed a depressing picture for him. "And what are you going to do now?" I asked gently. "I don't know yet," he replied. "My main priority is to protect the children. I can't let them grow up thinking this kind of behavior is normal. But I want you to know, Brenda, if your lawyer needs a witness to testify about what Jessica said about the apartment, I'm ready to testify. I will tell the court the truth." When our conversation ended, I sat in silence for a long time. I was filled with complex emotions. On one hand, I felt a bitter satisfaction that my rightness was confirmed. But on the other hand, the realization of the scale of my sister's deceit and how it had destroyed Mark's life and their children's lives caused me almost physical pain. This case had long ceased to be just a dispute over an inheritance. It was about the dark side of Jessica's character, about the foundation of lies on which she had built her life for years. My heavy thoughts were interrupted the next morning by a call from Mr. Hayes. He had news. "Your sister's lawyer has contacted me with a settlement offer," Mr. Hayes reported. "They are willing to pay you $180,000 if you drop the lawsuit and allow the sale to stand." "My answer is a categorical no," I said without the slightest hesitation. "This apartment is worth more, and it was never about the money. It's about respecting my grandmother's last wish." I assumed as much. "But I need to make sure you understand what this refusal means." "It means a full-scale court hearing. And their lawyer has made it clear they are prepared to use the dirtiest tactics. Their main strategy will be to question your grandmother's sanity when she made the will. They will claim you exerted undue influence on her." A cold fury boiled within me. That's just disgusting. Grandma was of perfectly sound mind, and we have years of our correspondence to prove it. "I know, and we will present all the evidence. But be prepared, they will try to twist every fact. They will scrutinize your relationship with her, dispute every conversation, every gift. Emotionally, it will be very difficult." "Let them try," I answered firmly. "My grandmother's memory deserves to be defended. Her will cannot be ignored just because Jessica wanted a bigger house." "Understood," Mr. Hayes said. "In that case, we're going to court. I will officially notify their lawyer that the offer is rejected." The court hearing was scheduled for Tuesday, so on Saturday, I flew out of Milan. The long transatlantic flight gave me too much time to think. 3 years ago, I had left Austin in search of new experiences and independence. Now I was returning to fight for the very independence my grandmother had tried to give me, and which my own sister had stolen from me. At the airport, I was met by my college friend, Ethan. He was aware of the situation through my short messages and gave me a tight hug as soon as he saw me. "I still can't believe it," he said as we drove to his place. "I always knew Jessica could be arrogant, but to commit actual fraud, that's just on another level." "I know," I replied wearily. "Part of me still hopes this is all some monstrous misunderstanding, but every day it just gets worse." Over the weekend, Ethan did his best to distract me, but my thoughts inevitably returned to the upcoming hearing. On Saturday evening, Mr. Hayes emailed me a brief outline of our plan. We were going to present the court with the authentic will, Jessica's fabricated documents, and the testimony of her husband, Mark, about her statements regarding the sale. Additionally, we planned to involve the Miller family in the case to show that multiple parties were harmed by Jessica's deception. And on Sunday evening, Mr. Hayes called with completely unexpected news. "Brenda, an hour ago, Jessica's lawyer contacted me," he said. "They have a new offer. They are ready to completely nullify the sale and transfer ownership of the apartment to you. Your sister will cover all expenses related to this process." This sudden capitulation stunned me. Why did they change their position so drastically? I asked. "My professional guess?" "Mark," Mr. Hayes replied. "He most likely let Jessica know that he would not lie for her in court. Without his support, her entire defense collapses. Her lawyer obviously explained to her that she faces certain defeat in court, and this is her only chance to avoid a criminal record for fraud. And what will happen to the buyers, the Miller family? The sale will be nullified. They will get all their money back from the frozen funds, so they won't suffer financially. However, Jessica will have to fully compensate them for all their losses, including moving expenses and temporary housing. It will cost her a lot, but it's better than a prison sentence. I thought about his words for a long time. If I accept this offer, what consequences will Jessica face? Mr. Hayes paused. From a legal standpoint, if you sign the settlement, the criminal prosecution will be dropped. She will face condemnation from the family and huge financial losses, but she will avoid a criminal record. She won't go to jail. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow we go to court. We present our evidence, and a guilty verdict on the fraud charge is practically guaranteed. That means a criminal record, possible imprisonment, and the end of her career. Her marriage will likely not survive it. But you will get a full and unconditional confirmation of your rightness. I stared at the lights of Austin from Ethan's apartment window for a long time, weighing the two paths, harsh justice or a mercy that would allow my sister to avoid a criminal record. I thought about her betrayal, but also about Mark, their children, and my parents, caught in the middle. After telling Mr. Hayes I needed until the morning, I spent a sleepless night. By dawn, my decision was firm. I accept their offer, I told him on the phone at 8 in the morning. But on several non-negotiable conditions. I laid them out point by point. First, Jessica must provide me with a formal written confession and apology, in which she clearly states that she acted intentionally, knowing the true contents of the will. Second, she must fully compensate the Miller family for absolutely all losses they incurred, beyond what the law requires. Third, she must sign and send a letter to our parents, drafted by you based on the facts of the case, which will lay out the full truth of her actions. Failure to do this will void the agreement. And finally, she will sign a legal commitment never to contest our grandmother's will in the future. A couple of hours later, Mr. Hayes called again. The case is closed, he said. They accepted all your terms. The documents are being signed now. But I didn't feel the joy of victory. Only emptiness and a deep sadness. Yes, I had gotten the apartment back, and Jessica was forced to admit her guilt. But my family was broken. The person I had grown up with was a stranger. Later that day, Mr. Hayes handed me a folder of documents. Inside was a formal apology from Jessica. It was a cold, legally vetted text in which she admitted, point by point, that she knew about our grandmother's will, had intentionally forged the papers, and had deceived all parties involved in the transaction. Reading that dry confession of fraud, I fully realized for the first time that this wasn't just a family conflict. It was a crime. The letter to your parents was also sent this morning, Mr. Hayes added quietly. I nodded silently. I knew I had gotten what I sought, justice. But at the same time, I felt acutely how much had been lost. Mr. Hayes explained that now all I had to do was wait. The property transfer process was underway, and Jessica had fully taken on all the costs of the Miller family's relocation. I spent the next week in Austin, avoiding calls from my parents, whom I wasn't ready to talk to yet. I met with the Miller family to apologize to them in person. To my surprise, they treated me with incredible warmth and understanding, saying they were just glad the truth had prevailed. At their invitation, I stepped inside, and it was in that moment, standing in the rooms where I could still feel my grandmother's presence, that I made a final decision about the future of this apartment. Before flying back to Milan, I met with Mark. He wanted to personally thank me for not insisting on criminal prosecution. I explained that my decision wasn't driven by pity for Jessica, but by thoughts of him, their children, and the memory of my grandmother, who would have valued peace over revenge. Mark nodded silently, and in that silence, there was more understanding than in any words. Jessica and I have decided to take a break, he said. I'm going to move out for a while to think things over. This whole apartment situation. It just shed light on so many other things I'd been turning a blind eye to for too long. Honestly, I don't know if this can be fixed. I'm so sorry, I replied sincerely. Don't be. The only person to blame for this is Jessica, not you, he said. You just wanted what was rightfully yours. The fact that she turned it into such a massive deception is entirely on her conscience. He distractedly stirred his coffee. She's in a terrible position now. She had to sell that new house at a huge loss because without the money from the apartment, we couldn't afford the mortgage. Rumors of the fraud spread, and she's humiliated. And our parents, they're barely speaking to her. I winced. How are they? Your mom called me, she's completely devastated. Said she can't believe Jessica was capable of this and doesn't know how she'll face you after they defended her so unconditionally. They haven't called me, I said quietly. They're just ashamed. They don't know what to say. We sat in silence for a bit, finishing our coffee. Brenda, he said finally. What are you going to do with the apartment? I can't live there, I answered. Too much has happened. I'm going to sell it. I explained that I would use the money as my grandmother had intended. I would invest it in my own design studio here in Italy. It would give me the freedom and security she had dreamed of for me. Grandma always saw it, Mark said thoughtfully. She said you had the courage to leave, while Jessica stayed behind, trying to prove her worth through status and money. In a way, you were living the life she secretly wanted but was afraid to. His words changed everything. It wasn't just greed. It was resentment of my freedom. Before we parted, Mark hugged me, expressing hope that one day we could become a real, healthy family. I agreed that maybe it would happen, but it would take a very, very long time. I returned to Milan the next day. I felt drained, but for the first time in a long while, at peace. The apartment transfer was supposed to be completed within a week, and Mr. Hayes had already connected me with a real estate agent in Austin. At work, my boss, Stefan, immediately noticed a change for the better in me. Whatever it was, it looks like you've handled it, he remarked with approval. Almost, I replied. By the way, I've been meaning to discuss. I'm planning to go freelance and open my own studio, but I'd like to continue collaborating with you on a contract basis. He wasn't surprised. I've been waiting for you to take this step. Let's discuss how to make this mutually beneficial. Over the next month, while the final formalities with the apartment were being handled, I laid the foundation for my new business, creating a portfolio, networking, and making plans. This new freedom was both exciting and terrifying, but my grandmother's words, "Don't let life make you small," gave me strength. As soon as the apartment officially became my property, it was sold quickly. The new owners were a young couple expecting their first child, and there was a kind of fitting, symbolic finality to it. When the $350,000 was deposited into my account, I stared at the number for a long time. This was exactly what my grandmother had wanted for me. Jessica had tried to steal that future, but justice had prevailed. I immediately paid off all my student loans. I transferred a significant portion to my new business account. The remaining funds I invested, creating the very financial safety net that would allow me to take creative risks and live without fear. 4 months later, fully immersed in my new life in Milan, I received an email from my mom. The subject was short, "I'm sorry." Inside was what I no longer expected, a full and unconditional admission of guilt. She wrote about how ashamed she and my father were for blindly believing Jessica and not supporting me. She admitted that these events had forced them to face the truth and see that they had always treated my sister and me differently. My mom wrote that they had failed not only me but also the memory of our grandmother, whose will they had tried so hard to protect. She asked for forgiveness for not asking questions and not demanding proof. At the end of the letter, she added that she would understand if I wasn't ready to forgive them, but they would always love me and were incredibly proud of the brave and independent life I had built for myself. "Your grandmother always saw that in you," she wrote. "It's a shame we realized it so late." I reread my mother's letter several times with tears in my eyes. It wasn't an instant healing, but it was the sincere remorse that offered hope. I didn't reply immediately, deciding I needed time, but I realized the door to reconciliation was no longer closed. 6 months after this story began, in November, my dream came true. I opened my own design studio, naming it Eleanor Creative in honor of the grandmother whose gift made it all possible. Business quickly took off. I landed my first major international clients, and the work brought immense satisfaction. I even hired an assistant soon after, a talented young woman named Chloe, in whom I saw myself at the beginning of my journey. My small studio began to grow, and I finally felt like I was where I belonged. On the day Grandma Catherine would have turned 89, I took a small day off for myself. I sat on a park bench with a coffee, my thoughts far away, in Austin, in that cozy armchair by the window where we had talked so much. "Thank you for believing in me," I whispered. "Thank you for this chance. I won't waste it." Shortly before Christmas, a small package arrived from my mom. Inside, in a box, lay my grandmother's elegant silver watch. And on the back, I discovered an engraving I had never seen before: "The world is waiting." I never spoke to Jessica again. From Mark, with whom I exchanged occasional messages, I knew her life had changed drastically. The loss of her job at the insurance company due to reputational damage, the divorce, a modest apartment she was struggling to rebuild. I didn't rejoice in her misfortunes, but I felt no guilt either. Jessica had made her own choice. The consequences of that choice were not my fault, but solely her responsibility. The process of reconciling with my parents was slow and fragile. Our infrequent video calls were initially filled with awkward silences, but over time, the tension began to fade. They still didn't fully understand my life in Milan, but at least they were trying. And that was what mattered. A year after Grandma Catherine's passing, I flew to Austin again for a memorial evening organized by her close friends. My parents were there too. Our hug was a bit stiff, but it wasn't fake. Jessica's absence was more eloquent than any words. She wasn't invited, and no one asked questions. After the ceremony, my mom pulled me aside. "I should have told you sooner," she began. "I have a letter for you from your grandmother. She left it with instructions to give it to you only if there were problems with the apartment. She must have sensed that Jessica might try something. She wrote it 6 months before she passed." My mom handed me a fragile, time-yellowed envelope. Inside, I saw Grandma Catherine's familiar, steady handwriting. She wrote that she had left this letter in case something went wrong. She repeated again why the apartment was meant for me, because I, more than anyone, valued freedom and built a life on my own terms. She asked me not to give in to guilt and not to let anyone pressure me. "You were always stronger than you thought," she wrote. "Fight for what is rightfully yours, and know that I was always proud of you." I carefully folded the letter, tears blurring my vision. Even after she was gone, my grandmother was with me. She had foreseen Jessica's betrayal and left me a final message of support and love. "Thank you for keeping it," I said to my mom. She nodded, her eyes also moist. "She was right," my mom said quietly. "She always saw how strong you are. Much stronger than we all thought." The consequences of Jessica's actions were long-lasting and irreversible. As the details of the settlement were public, rumors of her deception spread quickly through Austin's business circles, effectively destroying her career in the insurance industry. She had to take a low-paying retail job, a mere shadow of her former life. Over time, as her children grew up and learned the truth, it did irreparable damage to their relationships. Ultimately, she lost everything: her marriage, her career, and the respect of her family. The woman who had spent her life positioning herself as the responsible pillar of the family was, in fact, a fraud, and that stain remained with her forever. Several years later, I stood on a rooftop terrace in Milan at a party celebrating the successful completion of a major project for my studio. On my wrist was Grandma Catherine's watch, and I wore a dress I had bought without looking at the price tag. My business was thriving. My life was filled with creativity and true friendship, and I finally felt that I had created something truly my own. Looking back on that long-ago story with Jessica, I understood what my grandmother's true gift was. It wasn't the apartment or the money. It was a lesson: my future and my dreams are worth fighting for, even if you have to fight the people closest to you. By trying to take everything from me, Jessica, without meaning to, helped me find a strength within myself that I never knew I had. And that strength, in the end, turned out to be the most valuable inheritance of all.